Hey everyone, welcome back to Education Experts. I am Bharti Sharma, your spoken English educator. So today in this video, we are going to discuss next part related to tenses series, which is based on past continuous tense. So let's get started. All right, let's start first the definition of past continuous tense. The past continuous tense is employed in a sentence to represent an action or event that was going on in the past. In other words, it shows the progress of the action or event at a specific time in the past, right? The past continuous tense is therefore also called the past progressive tense, right? So there are two things basically. What is past continuous tense? Whatever the action has happened, right? Whatever the progress of that action has happened, that we call it, that we can say it in a past continuous tense, right? So if you read it, right, read this line again. It says it shows the progress of the action or event at a specific time in the past, right? So it will tell you the specific time as well as the progress of the action. So these are the two things that we can get from past continuous tense. Also, as I have told you in my every continuous tense video, that we can also call continuous tense as a progressive tense, right? So you can also call it as past progressive tense. Clear? All right. Now let's talk about its helping verb. So the helping verb that we are going to use in this continuous tense will be was, were, was, were, plus first form of the verb and ing, right? Whenever we are talking about any continuous tense, I have told you v1 and ing will remain always same. What will change? The thing will change is going to be always only and only auxiliary verb. If you're talking about present, then we have to use is mr. If you're talking about past, then we have to use was and. Clear? All right, I hope this is clear for you. Now let's jump into a lot of examples. So these are the examples that we can get what is past continuous tense. So they were waiting for the bus. They were waiting for the bus. If I call this sentence in Hindi, then you can say it as वो लोग बस का वेट कर रहे थे, कर रहे थे. So if you remember in my basic classes, I have told you there is an identification of past continuous tense. So whenever you get कर रहे थे, कर रहा था, कर रहा होगा, इस तरह, whenever you get such words at the last, then you can identify that it is a past continuous tense. Clear? Next up we have is it was snowing yesterday. It was snowing yesterday. कल स्नो पड़ रही थी. Again, next up is you were working yesterday. तुम कल काम कर रहे थे. Right? So if you notice, we can get in all these sentences पढ़ रही थी, कर रहे थे, wait कर रहे थे. Right? So this is the identification that you can get what is past continuous tense. Next up we have is everyone was clapping. Everyone was clapping. So if you notice again, there is only one thing common in every sentence, which is ing. V1 and ing will remain constant in every progressive tense. What will change? Only and only helping verb. So if you are having singular subject, then you have to use what? Was. And if you are having plural subject, then you have to use were. Clear? Next up we have is, were you calling me when I emailed you this afternoon? Were you calling me when I emailed you this afternoon? So this is the type of interrogative sentence, right? While she was sleeping, someone took her phone. While she was sleeping, someone took her phone. Mark was making pizza while Anthony was watching him. So there are two past continuous tense that we can show at the same time. Mark was making pizza while Anthony was watching him. So this type of sentence you can get you can, I'll tell you about this thing in the uses of past continuous. Next up we have is I was waiting for the cab when I met Raj. I was waiting for the cab. मैं कैब का वेट कर रहा था. कब? जब राज मुझसे मिला था. Right? Next up we have is, what are you doing? This is the most common sentence that we use on a daily basis. What were you doing? What are you doing? right? If you're talking about in present, then what are you doing? And if you are asking to someone about the past, then what were you doing at that time, you can, right? Next up, last up we have is, it was midnight when it was raining. I hope this is clear for you. I hope the definition is definitely clear for you. And now let's move forward and get into the uses of past continuous. So it's high time for you to learn about uses of past continuous tense, right? So there are a lot of uses of past continuous tense, and we will understand it one by one. So let's get started. First up we have is, when we use the past continuous tense, our listener usually knows or understands what time we are talking about. Yes, you can see this, right? So basically, whenever we use past continuous tense, our listener or the person who is listening, you can say, right, they can definitely understand just by saying the line that what time we are talking about, what time we are talking about. If we were saying, I was doing that, I was doing that, so they can definitely understand that I am talking about the past. And if I'm telling you that he is doing this, that means I'm talking about present. So usually the listener gets to know that what time we're talking about, right? Let's see some examples of it. She was sleeping when I call her. She was sleeping when I call her. So you can definitely get the meaning that what time we're talking about. Of course, we're talking about past. They were not playing cricket at 10 a.m. right? So they were not playing cricket, again shows the time. I hope this is clear for you. Next up we have is, past continuous is often combined with past simple tenses. Yes, this is the most common use that you can definitely have to have a lot of examples of it so that you can note it. So basically, past continuous tense, sometimes we combine this as a past simple tense. How? Let's see some examples of it. While we were sitting at the stadium, the rain began. Next up, the past continuous tense were sitting, and the past simple is began. So just before this thing also, I have given you one example. I don't remember that. If you look at it, one second. So if you remember in this sentence, yeah, this was a sentence. I was waiting for the cab when I met Raj. So there are two sentences now. First up we have is past continuous tense, and then we have is past simple tense. So that this is how you can get this, right? So while we were waiting at the stadium, the rain began. So this is how you can get this idea that we can use past continuous tenses and often combined with past simple. Let's move forward and understand some more uses of past continuous tense. All right, now next up we have is, we often use the past continuous tense to set the scene. Yes, to set the scene in stories. We use it to describe the background situation at the moment when the action begins. Often the story starts with past continuous and then moves to the past simple tense. Yes, if you notice, most of the stories, when we make stories or when we listen to the stories, most of the time we start, or we mostly start when we write it, or when we are telling to each other, then at that time we mostly use past continuous tense, and after that they shift to past simple tense. So let's see some examples of it. So this is the example. Mr. David was driving. If you remember, if in Hindi we start the story, we usually start it by saying that कि मिस्टर डेविड वो कर रहे थे, उन्होंने वैसा किया, उस टाइम वो हो रहा था. Then we shift to past simple tense. So that thing applies to English also. How? Mr. David was driving through town. It was raining. Again, the wind was blowing hard. Nobody was walking in the streets. Suddenly, David saw. Right? This is how beautifully you can shift from past continuous to past simple. It's just a matter of practice. Once you get into the practice, you will get to know how to create this and how to shift from past continuous to past simple, right? So if you notice, we have started using past continuous tense: was driving, was raining, was blowing, was walking, and then we shifted to past simple. That means suddenly David saw the killer in a telephone box, and you can continue the story. I hope this is clear. Let's move forward and understand another use of past continuous. Parallel actions. Basically, past continuous is used to indicate a long action that was interrupted, usually the action that interrupts the long action in the past simple. So basically, when we're talking about any long action and that was interrupted, and usually when the action gets interrupted, it usually gets interrupted by simple, past simple. How? I was watching television when you called me. So I was watching television, right? It's a long process. I was watching something movie or maybe something when you called me. So when you called me, called, what does call represent over here? Call is representing over here the past simple tense, of course, right? Next up we have is what was he doing? What was he doing? That means it's a past simple tense, and then it gets interrupted by past simple. How? When you walked into the, so this is, you can say that like this. This is the past parallel action. At a time of parallel actions, when two actions are happening at the same time, at that time, first one is past continuous and the next up we have is past simple. I hope these four uses are definitely clear for you. Let's move forward and understand some more uses of past continuous tense. All right, so next use of past continuous tense is it can also be used to express a change of mind, right? Or thought that happened in the past. So when you want to express a change of mind or thought that happened in the past, you can use past continuous tense. All right. He was going to pack a ham sandwich for lunch, but he decided, let's see some examples of it. He was going to pack a ham sandwich for lunch, but he decided to make a peanut butter and jelly. So if you look the sentence more closely, you will get to know the change of mind. How? So basically, the person we're talking about was going to pack a ham sandwich first, and then he changed his mind and he decided to make a peanut butter and jelly instead. This is how you can use past continuous tense in a more beautiful manner. Clear? So he was going to pack a ham sandwich. This was the first line, that he just going to pack a ham sandwich, right? Then he suddenly changed his mind, right? But we are not literally writing it, or we are not telling it in this way. We can tell it indirectly that he changed his mind. How? He was going to pack a ham sandwich for lunch, but he decided to make a peanut butter and jelly instead, right? Next up we have is Dane was going to accept the job offer in New York but changed his mind later. First up we have is he was going to accept the job offer in New York, but again he changed his mind. So this is how you can express a change of mind or thought that happened in the past. I hope this is clear. Now let's move forward and understand another use. So next use of past continuous tense is past continuous tense can also be used to show two actions or going on at the same time in the past. This was the thing, this was the use that I have told you in the starting of this video when I gave you some example. I don't remember that. Neither of these actions are happening in the present. Let me check the use of it 1 second. Uh, yes, you can say this. You can see, I was telling you this example that Mark was making pizza while Anthony was watching him. And I think I have used this again. Alright, so this is how you can use this. Mark was making pizza while Anthony was. There are two actions that are happening at the same time in the past only, and neither of these actions are happening in the present. She was also playing the piano. Sorry, she was playing the piano while Anne was singing on stage. So again, there are two actions that are happening at the same time. She was playing the piano while Anne was singing on the stage. So this is how you can use two actions at the. I hope you understood it, and now let's move forward. Next up we have is while or when. With the past continuous sentences have clauses that start with while or when. While usually start with the clause while usually starts the clause with the past continuous. When usually starts the clause with past simple. So this is the most simpler one, so that you can understand if when you want to use the past simple tense in a sentence, then you had to start with when. But if you are using the sentence in past continuous tense, then you can use it by starting with while. How? Let's see some examples. It started raining while I was jogging. So you have used past continuous tense, that's why you have to use while over there. It started raining while I was jogging. And if I shift this sentence in a next another mood, then you can say while I was jogging, started raining. Both are the correct thing. Both are the same thing. Let's see about the when example. When it started raining. When it started raining, I was jogging. You can say it like that. Or you can also say it like that. I was jogging when it started raining. Both are the simple thing. Notice that although the meaning of each pair of sentences is exactly the same, while or when shift emphasis, right? It's the game of emphasis. While, where are you emphasizing? See, if I see the example again, when it started raining, I was jogging. So where you are emphasizing, so you can say it like when it started raining, I was jogging. Or you can also say it like I was jogging when it started raining. It's the game of emphasizing, right? Emphasizing the sentence. Where are you emphasizing? It's the game related to that. I hope this is clear for you. Now let's move forward and understand some more uses. All right, so we are on the very last two uses of past continuous tense. Let's understand it. It can also be used with the word wonder. When using it this way, it is used as a request. The request is not happening now and was made in the past, right? If you are using past continuous tense, it can also be used with the word wonder, right? So when you're using this thing, it is used as a request. How? Let's see some examples of it. I was wondering if you could walk the dog for me this evening. So basically, we are making a request by using the word wonder instead of the word request. I hope you get it. So basically, again, I'm repeating myself. We are requesting by using the word wonder instead of the word request. So you can also say the wonder instead the word. You can replace the word request with wonder. Clear? I was wondering if you could, when you're using could, that means I've told you this thing, I have teach you this thing in my model verbs also, that when you're using could, that can also be used as a polite request, right? So I was wondering if you could walk the dog for me this evening. Next up, she was wondering means she was requesting. She was wondering if you could babysit after school today. We were wondering if she was able to meet us at noon. I was wondering if you could open the door. So this is a polite way to ask someone, to request someone, right, to do something for you. This is a polite way, and with wonder, you can definitely past continuous tense. Now let's get into our very last use of past continuous tense. So what does it say? It says it can be used with the words always, constantly, and forever. When using it this way, it is used to talk about things that happened repeatedly but occurred in the past. The action is not happening now and was. So basically, you can use this word with always, constant, forever. And whenever you are using this in this way, you are basically talking about the things that are happening repeatedly, right? But occurred in the past only. You're not talking about the present. How? Let's see some examples. My husband was always talking about friends from school, right? First, always talking about friends means we're talking about only past, right? And we have also used over here always. So when you're using always, you have to use past continuous. My husband was always talking about friends from school. Next up, our neighbor was always telling us funny stories about his daughter. Grandma was constantly, again, constantly plus singing, constantly plus past continuous, right? So my grandma was constantly singing songs when she made us. So with this last use, I am hoping that every doubt of yours is definitely clear for you and you have understood all the uses of past continuous tense. Now let's get started with the sentence structures and with every type of sentence. All right, now let's start with sentence structure. So first up we have is affirmative sentence or positive sentence. So what's the sentence structure for affirmative sentences? You know, I already know about this thing. That's subject plus was were. Because I've told you this thing in the starting of this video when I was discussing about the definition, right? So subject, was were, verb, ing, object and other words. And where to use was and were, that also I've told you already. Whenever we're talking about singular subjects, then you have to use was. And whenever we're talking about were, that means you're using plural subjects. I hope this is clear for you. Now let's directly jump into the lot of examples. First up we have is we were doing our homework. We over here is a subject and that comes in a plural form. So that's why we have used were with it. We were doing our homework. We're doing our homework. All right, next example is I was running in the park when you sent me that message. See, if you remember this thing, I have told you when you're talking about two actions at the same time. First one we have is past continuous, and then next one we have is past simple tense, right? And also I have told you about while and when. And in this sentence, you can definitely notice that we are using past simple tense, and with that we have used when. So we are following the rules as well. All right, so I was running in the park when you sent me that. I over here is what? Subject, and that's why we have singular subject. That's why we have used was plus verb run plus first ing. I was running object in the park when you sent me that. They were always watching television on high volume late at night. They were always. They over here is what? Plural subject. That's why we have used were. Next up, they were reading bedtime stories for hours last night. Next up we have is I called her 11:45. I called her at 11:45 and she was practicing sport. Right? Next up, we were fighting about politics all evening long. So we again plural subjects were. I if you're using plural subject then you have to use were. Fighting about politics all evening long. You were all doing the chores together. Next up we have is sadly she was playing games with me. Next is I was watching you yesterday at 7 p.m. I was watching, right? Again we're talking about past, right? He was seeing a new girl last month. You were telling me funny jokes. If I ask you, what were I doing at that time? I don't remember that. You can tell me you were telling me funny jokes. Right? Last sentence. That is, she was going to. What was she doing? If I ask you what was she doing, then you can answer me. She was going to school. She was going to school. So this is how you can create positive or affirmative sentences. All right. Now next up we have a sentence structure for negative sentences. And what is the rule for it? Subject, was, were, not, first form of the main verb, ing, object and other words. And you know where to use was and where to use were. So let's directly let's understand the sentence structure for negative sentences. The sentence structure for negative sentences will be subject, was, were, not, we means main verb. Then ing, object and other word. And you know where to use was and were. So now let's understand what is the contraction form was not and were not. If you're using was not, then you can say it like wasn't, wasn't, wasn't. And if you're saying were not, then you can say it as weren't, weren't, weren't. I hope you have focused on the pronunciation part and you've got it, and you have also practiced as I'm hoping this, right? Now let's move forward and understand directly a lot of examples. My boyfriend was not telling me truth. My boyfriend was not telling me the truth. So this is a negative sentence. That's why we have used not over here. Next up, you were not doing your homework. You were not doing your. She wasn't planning her wedding. Again, let me tell you this thing. Again, let me repeat myself. I've already repeated myself a lot of times that whenever we are going to use not and we are going to not with auxiliary verbs at that time, then do remember this thing, and we can use contraction forms only while we are speaking or if you are writing in an informal manner. Otherwise, if you are writing any informal manner, in formal manner, not in informal, I'm talking about formal manner, at that time you cannot use contraction forms. Clear? So you can say it, you can, while speaking, you can say that she wasn't planning her wedding. But if you are writing in this thing in formal manner, at that time you cannot use, right? Next example we have is he was not dancing on stage last night. He was not dancing on the stage last night. And if you are saying this line to your friend or something, then you can say it as he wasn't dancing on the stage last night. Clear? Next up we have is she wasn't playing with us. She was not playing with us. She wasn't playing with us. Bob was not cutting the trees. He was not listening to me. He was not taking the medicines regularly. I was not accepting her invitation. She was not taking care of her child. He was not studying chemistry yesterday. So just try to notice that subjects are continuously changing. Sometimes it's I, sometimes it's she, sometimes it's he, Bob, she, you, my boyfriend. Subjects are continuously changing. What you have to notice is whether the subject is singular or whether the subject is plural. If the subject is singular, we have used always was. Notice it. I was, she was, he was, Bob was, my boyfriend was. And whenever we have used the plural subject, at that time we have used were, and you comes over here in were. And of course, let me tell you, when we are using I at the time of past continuous tense, then you cannot count it in as a plural subject. Sometimes I gets confused at the time of tenses. Sometimes it plays as a singular subject, sometimes it plays as a plural subject. But this is English. This is what English is, and you have to remember this thing. So basically, if you're talking about past continuous tense, at that time I plays always a singular subject. Yeah. Next up is I was not watching television when she came. So basically there are two actions that are happening at the same time, and first up we have is first we have used past continuous tense, and then next we have used as past simple tense, and with past simple tense we have used when, right? She was not attending the classes regularly. She was not attending the classes regularly. I hope all the examples is definitely clear for you. Now let's move forward and understand interrogative sentences. All right, so sentence structure for interrogative sentences. Let's understand it. Let's understand first the structure. So you just have to put the auxiliary verb before the subjects. This is what I have told you from the very long time, that whenever we are going to use interrogative sentences, at that time you have to use your auxiliary verb before the subject. So was, were, subject, verb, ing, object, other words, and most importantly, question mark. I hope this is clear for you. Now let's directly jump into the examples. So, was she calling me last Sunday? Was she calling me last Sunday? She again is a here. Here is a singular subject. That's why we have used started the sentences with was. Was she calling me last Sunday? Was she calling me last Sunday? Were you asking for help? Were you asking for help? Was she reading a book when I called her? Again, notice this thing. We have used two sentences. We have used two actions at the same time. First, we have used as past continuous, and then we are used as a past simple tense, and again we have used when. So when and while. Do remember that thing, that use, that rule of past continuous tense in your. Was I always going late to office? Was I always going to late to office? Were they talking while the kids were playing? again you have to remember this. See, were they talking while the kids were playing? See, again this rule, again the rule that I've just spoken about, that is while or when. Now in this sentence again I have used two actions at the same time, but I am using both the time past continuous tense, and with past continuous tense you have to use while. So this is, you can see it in this example, that is, were you talking while the kids were clear. Next up we have is, was she burning the fire? Was Jimmy broadcasting the news? Were you preparing for the final exams? Was she washing clothes? Were they playing hockey yesterday? And was she working in a factory? The rest of the sentences are very simple. It's just according to the structures. What you have to keep remember in your mind again and again, the rule of while and when. Otherwise, all the rules are definitely important and you can use that in while you are making the sentences. But most of the time, most used sentence, most used rule is while and when. So that's the most important, that's automatically becomes the most important rule. I hope this is clear for you. Now let's move forward and understand interrogative negative. Before jumping into interrogative negative, let me tell you, in this sentences, interrogative sentences, if you notice all of these sentences, you will get to know the answer in yes or no. For example, if I'm taking any example randomly, if I'm asking to repeat this sentence, was she burning the fire? Was she burning the fire? Can you answer this thing in detail? Yes, you can answer this thing in detail, but first, this answer always will go into either yes or no, right? Was she calling me last Sunday? Then you can say, yes, she was calling you last Sunday, or you can say, no, she was not calling you last Sunday. Were you asking for help? Yes, I was asking for help. No, I was not asking for help. Was she reading a book when I called her? No, she was not reading a book. Yes, she was reading a book. Was I going late to office? No or yes. So just randomly pick any of the example and you will get the answer either in yes or in no. So this is what interrogative sentences. And at the time of double interrogative, every answer will come into. Let's talk about that in the double interrogative sentences. Otherwise, first let's jump into the interrogative negative. All right, sentence structure for interrogative negative sentences. What is the sentence structure? So I have distinguished the both the sentence structure into formal and informal, means contracted forms and non-contracted forms. So that you cannot get confused with where to use contracted forms and where not to use contracted. As I have told you this thing many times, so I don't think so there should be any confusion regarding this. You should, I don't think so that you can get in any dilemma, but still I have distinguished that, so that if in case you have any dilemma regarding this, now this can definitely get clear for you. So these are the two structures that I have distinguished, or both the structures are exactly same. We just have shifted not from after the subject to before the subject while speaking, right? So if you are writing in any formal manner, then you have to follow the first rule, and if you are speaking or you are writing in any informal manner, then you have to use the second one, right? Was, were, subject, not, verb, ing, object, and otherwise plus question. Wasn't, weren't, wasn't, weren't, subject, verb, ing, object, other words, and question. So this is how you create the sentence structure for interrogative negative sentence. Clear? Let's see some examples of it. Wasn't he apologizing for his mistake? Now you have to tell me. This sentence is an informal manner. Very good. Wasn't he apologizing for his mistake? Apologizing means you feel sorry when you regret whatever you have done wrong, right? Next up we have is, was I not answering correctly? Was I not answering correctly? So this sentence is a formal one. Wasn't I, if it should be, if it was wasn't, then it should be formal, but I am using it as a formal manner. Was I not answering correctly? Next up we have is, was she not working in a factory? Then now you can definitely recognize this is the formal sentence. Next up we have is, were we not watching movie? Were we not watching movie? This is again a formal sentence. Now, weren't you waiting for him yesterday? Weren't you waiting for him yesterday? Again, this is the informal sentence. Were they not laughing? And now the rest of the sentences, I'm not going to tell you which sentence is in a formal manner and which sentence is in an informal manner. Now you have to recognize which sentence is in an informal and which sentence is the formal manner. Were they not laughing? Was I not reading article? Was he not laughing? Were you not listening while he was talking? So these are the four examples that you have to recognize which one is formal manner and which one is informal manner. Otherwise, I am hoping the sentence structure and everything is definitely clear for you. Now let's move forward and understand double interrogative. All right, sentence structure for WH family sentences, or you can say double interrogative. So let's talk about both the structures, that is positive and negative structures. WH family: was, were, subject, verb, ing, object plus other words plus question mark. This is a normal suppositive sentence. And if you're talking about negative sentence structure, that means WH family: was, were, subject, not, plus verb, ing, object and other words and question. I hope this is clear for you. Let's directly jump into the examples. First up we have is where she was going. Where was she going? Where was she going? Now just look at this example more closely and you will get to know that you can answer this thing only in detail. Where was she going? She was going to the mall, she was going at a party, or whatever the thing. You cannot answer this thing yes or no, obviously no, right? Next up, why were the buses running late? Why were the buses running late? Why she wasn't talking to me? Why she wasn't talking to me? What were they talking behind my back? What were they talking behind my back? Why were you laughing? Why were you laughing? What were you doing while you were waiting? For whom were people waiting? Who was standing at the door? So just look all the sentences closely and you will get to know that every question needs to be answered in detail. Otherwise you cannot answer this, right? Otherwise I think everything is clear for you. Past continuous is again very simple thing. You just need to remember all the uses of past continuous tenses. Otherwise all the structures is very exactly same and there's slight difference in all the sentence structures. I hope this is clear for you. Past continuous tense is definitely 100% clear for you who are not in any dilemma by now. So thank you so much for watching this video till the end. I hope you stay connected and be happy.